drop of golden
How
sun.
about that for a clue of where we're going today with film study professor Joe Fortunato as we go to film school.
So, a needle pulling thread.
So what do you say we do it? Joe's going back in time with a real classic and really one of my favorites, too, of all time. Let's bring him in, Joe Fortunato. Good morning, Joe.
Yeah, we've got a pretty big one today. This is one of the most beloved and most lauded films of all time, The Sound of Music from 1965, celebrating its 60th anniversary this year. It was released in March of 1965 in the U.S. It's directed by Robert Wise, written by Ernest Lehman. It's from the book by the real Maria von Trapp called The Story of the Von Trapp Family Singers, and her 1949 memoir. And it stars, of course, the great Julie Andrews, as well as Christopher Plummer, Eleanor Parker, and a bunch of kids, which we'll talk about in a little bit. It was nominated for 10 Oscars. When I said it was very lauded, it was. 10 Oscars is a lot. It won 5 of them, including Best Picture. Also Best Director, Sound, Editing, and Score. Julie Andrews was nominated for Best Actress. She didn't win, but she got the nod among some of her other peers. The AFI lists The Sound of Music as the 55th greatest American film of all time. And it was a major commercial success as well as a critical darling. It became the #1 box office film after just 4 weeks. It was the highest grossing film of 1965. And by November of 1966, so, a year and a half-ish later, it had become the highest grossing film of all time, surpassing Gone with the Wind at the time. And it held that title for about 5 years. It's also credited, the movie is credited for saving 20th Century Fox, the studio, after the debacle that was Cleopatra in 1963, which nearly, did bankrupt the studio. And Sound of Music kind of brought it back. And then it's been popular for really ever. When this movie was first released on home video, which would have been the 80s, it stayed on the charts for over 250 weeks, almost 5 years. So when I say popular and critical darling, I am not kidding. It really was. Now, getting into sort of the production and stuff, Christopher Plummer, he really, and it has a happy ending, but it's kind of sad to hear. He really disliked working on this movie. He often referred to it as the sound of mucus, which is kind of a funny but gross thing. He kind of likened working with Julie Andrews to being hit over the head with a big Valentine's Day card every day. So they didn't get along at first, but then they became friends, and they remained friends until his death. So like I said, it did have a happy ending. But, his cynicism probably actually helped his performance in the movie, keeping it from being too sentimental. And he later admitted that his feelings were kind of immature and that Andrews was a great actress and a real professional. So that, like I said, happy ending there. Both Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer had to learn how to play guitar for the part. Now, Julie Andrews did sing on camera or on screen. Christopher Plummer's voice and his guitar were both redubbed, so kind of some work for nothing there. I kind of like this story. Julie Andrews, she sang on set Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, which of course is from Mary Poppins, to the children in the cast to entertain them between shooting, between takes and stuff. But because Mary Poppins hadn't yet been released when they were filming this, they just thought she was making up a song for them. So they didn't really know what that was. Didn't find out till like a year later. Speaking of Mary Poppins, Julie Andrews originally turned down the role of Maria von Trapp. She kind of feared that the character was too similar to her role in Mary Poppins.
Mm-hmm. Joe Fortunato with us, Film School, looking today at The Sound of Music. Joe, take us to the film itself in Salzburg. How much of the movie was actually shot there? I guess I'll start out by saying, was some of the movie shot there? And take us to the location shooting for this.
Yeah, it was. And what's kind of interesting about that is because it was pretty much a worldwide hit, except in Austria, because they just didn't like the way it came out. They said it was unrealistic and stuff. So it only lasted a few weeks in Salzburg. It was not a hit there. It was kind of unpopular, to be honest with you. So that's a little bit of a quirk. What's kind of interesting, though, speaking of the location, when they were setting up and filming the wedding scene in the film, there was nobody at the altar to wed them when they reached the top of the stairs for the scene. Someone had forgotten to summon the actor that was playing the bishop. So according to Julie Andrews, the real Archbishop of Salzburg is the person in the movie. They called the real Archbishop to come and marry them on screen, so to speak. So there is kind of an interesting legacy there in Salzburg. I want to talk about casting for a minute.
Sure.
Julie Andrews was always Robert Wise's first choice to play Maria, but it wasn't always that way. This film first started with Paramount Pictures in 1956, where they purchased the rights to the book, and they wanted to produce it with Audrey Hepburn as Maria. Now, that didn't happen, and when Wise took over, they eventually went to, like I said, Julie Andrews. But some of the people that were also looked at was Grace Kelly, kind of interesting, and Shirley Jones, who, of course, was popular at the time in a lot of musicals. Casting the captain was also difficult. A lot of actors were considered, including Bing Crosby, Yul Brynner, Sean Connery would have been kind of interesting, and Richard Burton. And some of the child actors that were interviewed or tested but weren't selected included Mia Farrow, Patty Duke, Shelley Fabre, Terry Garr, Kurt Russell, and this is a good one, the Osmonds. Some of the Osmond brothers were almost Von Trapp family singers. Talking about sort of the production of the movie, during the famous opening shot where she's singing "The Hills Are Alive" and out there on the mountaintop, it's iconic. We all know it. Anyway, that shot was taken from a helicopter, and Julie Andrews says that she tried digging her heels into the ground and bracing herself on every take because she was knocked over by the helicopter downdraft, and they finally got it. And the grass on that hill was supposed to be much longer, like a field, than it was at the time. But the filmmakers had made an arrangement with the farmer who owned the land to leave the grass long. But when they arrived for filming, the farmer had cut it short. So, Wise said, all right, we're going to do it anyway. And, of course, the scene came out very, very well. One other thing is, her iconic sort of short hairstyle wasn't the original plan. Originally, she had longish hair with her own natural brown color. There was an attempt to give her golden highlights that left her hair sort of a bright orange, kind of a bright orange mop, as it was described. And they basically settled on this strawberry blonde, pixie cut, I guess you would call it, that she would sport in the film. And of course, that became her Julie Andrews trademark look. But that wasn't the original plan.
Great stuff, this, and an iconic film. Joe, I imagine this is one of these many film schools that we do here on Fridays, because when you do it live and in person and such, and when you do it with your groups and your classes, they're much longer. But this is one of those films, I imagine, that you can go long distance with, because there's so many sidebar stories when you talk about The Sound of Music.
Well, there is a lot, and I had a lot today. I was like, I don't know if we're going to get through all this stuff, but I'll tell you a little secret, a little pull behind the curtain there, is I've never taught this film in class. It just hasn't fit in any of the classes I was doing. It's also really long, as you know, so it's a little hard to fit in a class. And we've never done a live Fortunato Film School of it. Maybe we'll have to fix that sometime, but that's a story for another day. Yeah,
well done. Well, speaking of film school and getting out in front of people, let's give you a little plug of what you're doing these days, my friend.
Yes, exactly. I couldn't have segued it better myself. Thank you. And this week, coming up next Thursday, so a little less than a week, we are doing Fortunato Film School Live, Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is one of my most popular film schools that I do, and we haven't done it in quite a while. And this is going to happen Thursday, March 20th at 6 p.m. in the City of Green Central Park, the community hall at the Central Park in Green. That's at 1795 Steese Road in Green, 1795 Steese Road, Central Park in Green. And we want to see everybody out there. This is a free event. I believe they're even going to be serving popcorn, so you even get some free food there along the way. And of course, if you've never been to one of my film schools, you definitely want to check it out. We do live commentary on the film. A lot of people sometimes say, "Oh, I've seen the film. I know the film," and that's great. If you know and love the film, all the more reason to come out, because I'm going to probably share things with you that you didn't know or have never seen in the film. And then, of course, if you've never seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, what are you waiting for? It's one of the greatest adventure films of all time. This is your chance to come out and see a free screening with some of my commentary, and then afterwards we'll talk about it, do a little Q&A. So it's a lot of fun. It's educational, great for the whole family, and again, it's free. So come on out next Thursday, March 20th, 6 p.m. at the City of Green Central Park, and can't wait to see a lot of people out there.
And not just because he's a good friend of mine. His film schools, if you haven't seen them, they're a must. And it's like Joe said, you think you've watched Raiders of the Lost Ark before, not like it when you watch it with Joe. So take advantage of that next Thursday down in Green and get out and check out his film school, Raiders of the Lost Ark. My friend Joe, thanks as always for being part of the show on Fridays. We'll do it again next week.
I look forward to it. See ya.
There you go. Joe Fortunato.